Welcome to my channel, Kelly Rene Every Day, where I'm here dedicated to teaching you the fundamentals of crochet through beginner-friendly projects. Now today is a deviation from crochet, as I am going to be teaching you how to make this beautiful soft scarf using a flat straight loom. Now the reason that I tried this technique was because I really enjoy and love the texture of these beautiful, I'm going to call them decorator yarns. Now you can crochet with these, but it's very hard to see your stitches. So by using a loom like this, you can create some really cool things. And in this case, this is a scarf, and I'm going to show you today exactly how to do that. Now, if you find this helpful and you would like to be part of my community here, please consider subscribing or like and share this video with anybody that you feel might find it useful. I would really appreciate that. So let's talk about the supplies that we're going to be using for this project. So first of all, you are going to need a straight loom like you see here. Now, in this case, there are 36 pegs total, or 18 on one side, 18 on the other. The size of the pins that are coming up here are the rods. They are perfect for an either number 5 weight yarn or a number 6 weight yarn. What I have here is a number 5 weight yarn. Now, so you'll need that. And then you're gonna need a loom hook, okay? Very, very simple. Now, when I bought my straight loom here, it came with an actual hook. So I will link down below exactly the one that I have, if you would like to purchase it, or maybe you have one already. And then you're also going to need a yarn needle just to weave in the couple ends that occur. And then you're going to need 3 skeins of yarn. Now, if you wanted to make it the same size I have here, which happens to be 10 inches wide by 63 inches long, that took 3 skeins of this Yarn Bee Fleece Lite Opal Fire yarn. This is a 5 weight yarn, and on each one of these there is 110 yards or 100 meters. So you will need 3 of these to make the 10 inches wide by 63 inch long scarf that I have here. And then you'll also need a scissors just to, you know, kind of straighten things up at the end. So with that, I think we're ready to get started. Okay, so as we look at our loom, this is called a flat, and it's a long loom. Again, it has a total of 36 pegs going along the length of it, and it happens to be about 13.5 inches from center of one of the pegs, the first pegs, to the last pegs. So when you actually create this, we are going to be putting it on the loom here, but it is going to actually kind of, if you would, shrink up or come down a little bit as you create it. So your scarf won't be that wide, but on this loom, you don't have to do the whole length that you're going to see me here. You could use a portion of this to make it a thinner scarf if you didn't want it as wide as the 10 inches that I have here. So very customizable. Now to get started, we're going to start by putting a slip knot, just like we do in crochet, on our end here. And this slip knot is just going to go on one of the end pegs here. Whether you pick this one or that one, honestly, it really doesn't matter. So, so we're just gonna snug that up, and it's just gonna keep our yarn in place. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna turn this a little bit, and on my loom, I'm gonna hold this up so that you can see, I am going to wrap around. So if I'm starting on the left-hand side here, I'm gonna wrap counterclockwise around the other peg on the other side. Then I'm going to come down, I'm going to go clockwise around the opposite. And then I'm going to go counterclockwise back around the one on the other side. And I'm going to continue to do that all the way down. So kind of doing like a figure 8. So on the right hand side, I am going clockwise or counterclockwise around. On the left hand side, clockwise. Counterclockwise, clockwise. And all the way down, alternating across those 2 rows of pegs until I get to the end. Now, the tension you're going to do here, do not try to pull this real tight. You just want to have a tension that is loose enough that it will still kind of sit on the top here. So notice that they're not falling down, okay? But you don't want it super tight, because when we start pulling over and we start pulling the what we call the bottom loop over the top, they're going to be really hard to do. So the tension here, you just want to get it around here so that it's tight enough that it doesn't fall. So now I'm on my very last peg here. I went around in that counterclockwise manner, and I'm just going to hold it in place, and I'm going to turn my loom. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to push this layer down. Okay. So if you would, they were all on the top here when I wound. I'm now just pushing it down smooth. You know, it's real smooth. You can push that down. All right. So they're now all on the lower layer. Now what I'm going to do is you'll notice that I have one round around here. So if I'm on this peg here, I am going to rotate around the other one and come back on the other side. So I'm gonna do that again for you. I always want to go in that same pattern that I had originally. So the right hand pegs as I work are always going to be wound in a counterclockwise direction. The left hand pegs will be clockwise. So again, a figure 8. Once you have 2 on each one, now you're going to continue down. So I'm going to counterclockwise around the right hand side, clockwise around the left. Counterclockwise right, clockwise left, and all the way down. And now we have like a new upper layer. So I'm going to have 2 layers or 2 strands on each one of my pegs. Now, the important thing here is if you start going counterclockwise around one peg on, like for instance, the right hand side here, you need to continue that very same direction every time you change and every time that you wind. And the reason for that is because it actually creates kind of a braided effect, a knitting look. This is called a knitting loom, so it's knitting. It gets that braided or V looking knit stitch on one side and then kind of a wavy on the other. So now into the end here, I'm going to hold this in position and I am going to rotate it like I did last time. I'm going to hold this in position because if I let go of this, it's going to unwind. Okay, I don't want that to happen. But now that I have 2 strands on here, I'm going to take my pick, okay, my tool here, and I'm going to pick up the bottom one. Now there's going to be like a recessed groove in our peg. You're going to go underneath that and you're just going to pick up that bottom loop and you're simply going to pull it over the top of the loop that you just created. And now you're just going to have 1 loop on your pin. You can do that in the next one. Pick up underneath, and that groove just allows you to get underneath there with your needle and go up over the top. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so you can see really clearly. I'm going to go underneath this one, up over the top of that one. So notice that the last 3 that I did, there is only 1 strand left on there. So the bottom, and I'm just going to pick up over the top. And I'm going to do that all the way down one side and then the other side until I only have 1 row of yarn on each one of my pegs. So I'm going to do that finishing this side, and then I'm going to go on the other side and I'm going to do that very same thing so that I go bottom over the top, and I'll be back for the next step. Okay, so now I have 1 strand on all my sides and I've pushed down in the middle so that my row of strands here, they're all at the bottom of the pegs. I'm ready to start winding my next row. Now right now, the very last strand came out of the right hand side here. So that means I'm not going to wrap around that one. I'm going to actually start on the left hand side with my figure 8, and then I'm going to wrap around the right hand side. Again, making sure that I'm counterclockwise on the right and clockwise on the left. So clockwise, counterclockwise, clockwise, counterclockwise. And I'm going to wrap all the way down. Now, as you get used to this, you're going to get a little faster and faster. And again, trying to keep that tension even, not too loose, not too tight. Because if it is too tight, you're going to find you won't be able to pick up the bottom strand and put it over the top. Okay, so you'll know right away if you're a little too tight. All you have to do is kind of unwind it and kind of start over. So again, making sure that it's just enough so that it stays, put with friction at the top here, but not too tight that it's like you're pulling on it. Okay, so I have my last one wound here. I always like to, I'm going to say, lock this one in place by going over the top with it. That way it's not going to unwind and I don't have to hold that end then. So now I'm simply going to do that very same thing. I'm going to go from the bottom and I'm going to pull over the top. and I'm gonna loop it over, loop it over. And again, making sure you can see. And this is the process that you're gonna continue for the entire length of your scarf. As I said earlier, I used 3 skeins of that yarn bee yarn that I showed you, like this that I have here on the loom, and it made that scarf 10 inches wide to 63 inches long, which is perfect for wrapping around. It drapes really nicely, and it's super nice and soft. So you're just going to keep doing this process until you get that scarf as long as you want. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you how to what we call binding off, so that we create a nice edge along the end, and then we can secure it and it won't come unwound. So I'll be back for that. So now I'm going to show you how to bind off and create a nice edge once you have your scarf the length you want. Now, it's going to continue to come down through the, the space that you have here on your loom. So it's going to be nice and long, but now you're going to be ready to bind off. So what you want to do is you want to locate where your yarn is coming off, and we're going to work on the opposite side. Now I am going to leave a nice long tail here. Okay. And I'm going to kind of put that to the side, and I'm actually going to work with that tail where I ended on this side. This is the tail that I started with, so you're just seeing that underneath here because my scarf isn't long. I just did a couple rows, but now this is going to be the side that you're going to work opposite of. So if this is on the right hand side, we're going to start on the left hand side. So what we're going to do now is we are going to look at our loom, and I'm going to call this the top row and this the bottom row. Okay. And we are going to take the loops on the top row, okay, and I need to use my fingers to do this, and we're going to put them on the top of the front row. So I'm going to have 2 on the front then, okay? So again, I'm going to pick up the loop on the top row as I'm looking at it here, and I'm going to bring it up over and put it on the top of the front row. So top, over, and then go down. So feel free to use your fingers. If I kind of use my pick and my fingers to do this, find it a little bit easier. So you want to get all of these on the front row, and I'll meet you back when you're done. Okay, so now you'll notice I don't have any loops on that top row there. I have 2. They're all on the bottom row here. And now what we're going to do is we're simply going to do a knit stitch on it. So we are going to take that bottom loop, oopsie, let me get on here, and we're going to go over the top, just like we did on all of our rows. So we're just going to work on this one side. So we're just going to pick up the bottom, put it over the top, bottom over the top. And I'm going to let you get to the end of the row, and I'll be back. Now this front row, okay, everything is on the front row, and there's only 1 strand left. Now we are going to start on the opposite side again. We want to have this tail yarn hanging out the end because we're going to end with that. And we're going to work with the first 2 stitches here. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to the second peg here. We're going to take this loop, and we're going to, I need to use your fingers, put it over the top of the first loop. So I've got 2 on, so nothing on this one, and I took this one and put it on the top of our first peg. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that bottom strand, bottom loop, and I'm going to put it over the top, okay? And then I'm going to grab this strand, and I'm going to transfer it back to the second peg. Let's do that again. So I'm going to start with my second peg here. I'm going to pick up the yarn, and I'm going to put it on top of the peg in front of it. Come on, come on. So now I just took it from here and I transferred it over, and I now have 2 loops on that peg. I'm going to take that bottom strand and I'm going to loop it over the top. And then I'm going to take this loop and I'm going to put it back on the peg that I came from that doesn't have one on it. Okay, so if you look at the top of what we just did on our work, we're making like a little stitch on the top there, okay? And we're going to continue to work to the right. Let's do it again. So if this is my end, I'm going to work with the second one. I'm going to take this loop off and drop that. I'm going to put it on that previous peg. Now there are 2 strands on there, or 2 loops. I'm going to pick up the bottom, go over the top, and now I'm going to take this loop and I'm going to put it onto the one that I came from. One more time. Take the second one to the right, pick it up, put it over the top. So now that there are 2 loops on the peg, I'm going to take the bottom loop and pull it over the top. And then I'm going to take that loop and I'm going to transfer it back to the peg that I came from. There we go. Okay. And then you want to do that all the way to the end. So I'm going to finish up my row here and I will meet you to let you know what to do on the last 2 pegs. Okay, so I'm down to the last 2 pegs and we're going to do that very same process. I'm going to work with my very last peg. I'm going to pull it off, put it over the top, take my bottom strand, loop over the top, and then I am going to I'm going to put it back on. I could leave it right on that one, okay? Now, because this is the end of my yarn, all that I want to do is I want to grab my yarn needle and I am simply going to thread this, okay? All right. And what I want to do is I'm going to pull this off and through that loop, I'm going to pull this strand, okay? And I'm going to do that twice through that same loop just to create a nice little secure knot. You want to kind of pull that tight to get that in. And then what we can do is we can weave it in to your work just like you would do with other projects. And this will weave in really nicely. And then you just cut off when you feel like you're done. You're just going to simply cut off. And now, very small scarf because this is my sample, but you will have a really soft, luxurious scarf. Like I said earlier, this is a great use for these pretty textured yarns that you end up seeing at the store and buying, thinking, oh, I'm going to make something really beautiful, only to find out when you start crocheting, it's really hard to work with. But using a loom knitter like this, you can make a really nice scarf that you're going to love for a long time. It also gives you a nice little break from doing that process of crocheting. Sometimes my hands get tired after I've been doing it for a while. And this is a nice little break to use different muscles and not wear out your hands. So that takes us to the very end here. I appreciate you sticking with me and thank you so much for taking the time to watch. And I look forward to seeing you in my next video.